It was always clear that the 2019 European elections would throw up some unusual results. The surge in populism, disillusion with the EU, austerity and immigration would cause people to vote in unexpected ways all over Europe. The populist advance, though, was patchy and not as large as some had predicted.
Well, I think there are a couple of reasons. Number one is probably an external factor called Brexit, because many voters on continental Europe saw where extreme positions and populism could lead to. And that led to party conferences of some of these populist parties to actually retreat from their calls for Frexit in France or even Dexit in Germany from the AfD. It's still in the manifesto, but it's very boiled down and quiet as a very long-term aim. And I think all these things contributed to the fact that populists did not flare as well as feared.
This meeting in London was organised by the Federal Trust together with the Konrad Adenauer Foundation and the Global Policy Institute to look at what the election results actually mean, why they happened and how it affects the governance of the EU. Will there be a price to pay of some sort?
No, I don't think so. I think there's still a strong centre bloc. It's just that it's been reshuffled a little from the centre-right and centre-left towards the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. I don't think it's going to be fundamentally more difficult than before to establish a centre bloc consensus. I've made the point that populism, of course, is a very varied phenomenon. We've already seen how difficult it is for the various elements of that populist bloc, if you like, to work together. Mr. Farage has been rather disappointed in his hopes to be the leader of that bloc, and I think that will be reflected in the way the votes cast themselves in the European Parliament in the months to come.
A lot of people want to know where we go from here. For one thing, the occupants of a number of key EU posts must be decided once the new European Parliament is in place. And with the traditional centrist parties of both right and left having shrunk in size, the outcome is hard to call.
Choosing the President of the Parliament, it creates some uncertainty. Certainly the presidency of the Parliament, which will be elected for 2.5 years, will be part of the equation in deciding the other top jobs. The other top jobs, of course, are the presidency of the Commission, the High Representative and Vice President, the job currently occupied by Federica Mogherini, so choosing her successor, and of course the presidency of the European Council.
With the United Kingdom set to leave the EU, there's been talk of a trade deal with the United States, amplified by the visit to London of President Donald Trump. He received a warm welcome from some politicians and newspapers, mainly on the political right, despite his demand for access to the National Health Service for US companies. He's been less welcome for many ordinary people. Britain's Labour Party doesn't like him either, but it's been somewhat ambivalent on Europe.
I think within the Labour Party itself, the vast majority of members and indeed members of Parliament in our national Parliament are strongly pro-European, but there is a minority within the leadership certainly who are not enthusiastic, who are still living in the 70s, in my view, but also for the people who live, say, in South Yorkshire, where I live now, in the areas which have never quite recovered, despite all the European money that it's gone in to try and provide alternative jobs. Those jobs have not provided the kind of security that mining and steel and engineering did.
One fear is that with a more populist parliament, even if the populists themselves are divided, many still share President Trump's scepticism about climate change, and they could weaken the EU's measures to tackle the issue. But they may not.
For the EU, this is a key issue, and if you look at all the movements, the young people protesting all around Europe, and I'm not talking just of Greta and pupils on a Friday afternoon, I'm talking of really a great massive interest. And if you look at some of the Green parties, which really became nearly mainstream, in particular in Germany, where the Greens really matured and are in some of the local governments quite successfully so, and are able to strike compromises between industry and climate interest, I think they are here to stay, and that topic will stay on the agenda, and Europe will continue to be one of the climate leaders in the future.
It was always misleading to speak of a single populist revolt, because left-wing populism is very different to right-wing populism, and the populism of France and the Front National is quite different to that of Salvini and Italy.
It was only in March that 1 million people demonstrated in London to call for a second referendum on leaving Europe. 6 million signed a petition to that effect. Both were ignored by a government set on appeasing its right-wing activists and backbenchers. But there was a time when the EU had fairly broad support.
We were building something good and new. And I think what made a big difference was the banking crash and the imposition of austerity, not just in the UK, but across many other European countries as well. And Europe has become a very easy scapegoat for national governments if their citizens were getting really fed up with things not going well. And unfortunately, it's actually been very successful.
Now, the Brexit Party will be heading to Brussels and Strasbourg. The question is, will they be more active or even more productive than the UKIP members of the past?
The record of UKIP is one of non-attendance and non-participation, other than in plenary sessions in Strasbourg, where they tended to attend because they like going to Strasbourg and have lots of fun. The type of person elected for the Brexit Party, I would say, compared to UKIP MEPs in the past, is of higher quality. Whether we're talking of Richard Tice or Anne Widdecombe, these are people who have, I'd say, a greater degree of talent than their UKIP predecessors in many cases. So it's possible that some of them will turn up and participate. It was true also of some UKIP MEPs in the past, although not true of most of them.
Much will depend on when and if the UK leaves the EU. As the delegates know, we live in interesting times, and to do so is an ancient Chinese curse. Conferences like this are important, but the future remains a matter of speculation. Jim Gibbons, EU reporter in central London.